screen in front of it. Well, good morning again, everyone. This lesson, I promise, I don't try to plan it like this, but I don't know if it's what's on my mind because of our Bible studies or whatever the case, but it always kind of seems to coincide for whatever reason. This lesson I got from, I was doing some research online and I was looking over a few articles and everything. La Vista, if you haven't ever looked at La Vista, there's a website, it's called La Vista, and a lot of good material on there, and I do some of my study and everything and get some of my ideas from there. And there's a gentleman named Dan Shipley. Dan Shipley, you may have heard of him. He's an old-timer. He's from Texas, and he came up with an article on tattling priorities. Tattling priorities. And I was like, man, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I like that. I like the sound of that. So I went ahead. A lot of what we'll go over is a lot from his article, so I would encourage, he wrote it back in I believe it was 1976, on a plane talk. But anyways, so I have to give credit to him, and I take a lot from that. The principle is pretty easy behind it. It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It begins with a simple question. Okay, there's a very simple question that it begins with. What are the most important things or people in your life? Okay, what takes up most of your concentration? What is the most important thing and the most important person or people to you in your life? And most of us know, Bible study class, I'm sorry I did this to you, but we already kind of talked about it this morning. Most of us know what the right answer is. And if you ask me that right now, and I remember, kind of coming up with this even when I was younger, most people can provide this. God's number one. Okay? And I do think if you even go out into the world today, if you go visit some of these other congregations, or denominations, I should say, you would still get that answer a lot. Again, the answer. God's number one, and then family is number two, we would all say, and even maybe more so, the faith of our family. Okay? My family's faith. The direction that they're moving in. And then number three, we would probably say, or at least I hope we say, God's people. They're probably the third most important thing to me. I got number one's God, of course. Number two's God, my personal, blood family, and our faith, and the direction I'm pushing them. And then the church, God's people. This brotherly love. And that would be probably a lot of our answers. And then after that, of course, I'm sure we could rattle off a bunch of things. It would be work, school, or whatever it is in your personal lives that you kind of feel that come next. That's awesome. Okay, congratulations, kudos to you. God would be very pleased if this were the case for you, or for me. He would be very pleased if that were actually the case. But is that really the truth? See, that's where things start getting a little different. Is that really the truth behind it? The story we tell, and maybe even sometimes tell ourselves, maybe even sometimes we build up ourselves, are they really what matter most? Is it really a true story whenever we're asking ourselves those questions? So, there's always a tattletale in the room. There's always a tattletale on what truly matters most. It's that 6-year-old kid. The 6-year-old kid that just says everything, even the stuff you don't want it to say. It's that. It reveals the truth. In this case, it's our what? Priorities. It's our actual day in and day out what we are doing. That'll always tell the truth. Again, I know I just mentioned it all this morning, but there's a lot of things that people can say, and I can say a lot of things. My ideas, my efforts, and my words. Is this what I'm reflecting? Is this who I am? Well, they tell God and the world exactly what matters most. They speak it. They speak more loudly than any answer we could give or emotion we might share. Those actions speak way louder. And moms, you've told your kids 1,000 times that's a statement, but it's true. Who you are and how you act and what you drive for and how you conduct yourself is who you are. So, in Dan's 1976, yeah, it was 19, I have it in my notes here, Plain Talk article, he does a really great job of this, and we're going to just kind of look at a few of his points, and it's going to kind of challenge us to look at our daily priorities and look at our true passions with everything. First, we're going to start here, Matthew 6:21. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. Probably, I go to this verse a lot, but, this is I think it stands true. We have to begin here. Matthew 6, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, one thing as we go through this lesson this morning, I'm going to need you to understand that that is an absolute truth. Okay? What I just said in Matthew 6:21, or what Jesus just said, rather, not what I just said, what Jesus just said, that is an absolute truth. We have to begin there. Okay? We have to all be willing to acknowledge that our daily treasures and our heart's desires, they go together. Okay? We can't have one set of things as our treasures and then say, yeah, but my heart's over here doing another thing. I truly treasure this, but my heart treasures this. That's not how it works. It's what a lot of people want to say it works, but it's not how it works. They go together. So you have to agree on that this morning. Okay? We have to get that and what Jesus said there. I'm going to use this illustration. Okay? There's a man with a literal Caribbean pirate's chest. I mean, this thing's authentic. He's got a pot of gold, a chest of gold. It was Blackbeard himself. And jewels and everything, and he hides them down in his storm cellar. And every single day, the first thing this guy does is he wakes up and he's like, let me go check on that chest. I gotta go make sure. And guess what he does after? He goes online and he sees what the price of jewels are going for today. Okay, where am I at with what will this jewel go for today? And this is what he does every day. And then guess what? He comes in, and he's always happy, okay? He's always happy because of this chest. And he talks about it all the time, but he doesn't share it yet. It's in that cellar, it's in that safe place. I mean, this thing is something. And so, he comes in, let's say it's a Wednesday night, I know I'm not here right now, but he comes in on a Wednesday night, we're having this study, and I ask the question, what are the most important things in your life? And this guy raises his hand. And he says, well, it's God first, and then family, and their faith, and then my church. Well, he said that. But let's face it, you know what we're all doing. Okay, buddy, yeah. I'm sure it is God first. Mister, every time I see you, you're telling me about your pirate's chest. You're telling me about the pot of gold and how much money you could make this month off of that pot of gold and this and that about it. Yeah, okay. I guess we'll go off that. It's not very genuine, is it? You weren't thinking that guy, those are his priorities. He said them. I think for us to better even understand that, we have to go down just a little bit more. Let's continue to read in Matthew 6, and we'll look at 19. Let's just go 19 through 24. Do not lay up your treasures, or lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be all of good light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one, and I want to look at really here, verse 24, Jesus said. But he tells a different story. He probably believes his story, Mr. Pirate Chest Man. He might believe that, yeah, this is what's actually important to me. But where is his focus? Where does that heart actually live? Where does he spend his time? What does he talk to? What does he talk about? Tattling priorities. His actions show what he is. And guess what he's a little guilty of? See verse 24 there. You cannot do that. Jesus goes ahead and lets you know that way back then. Guys, if you think you're going to belong to two different things, if you think your treasure's over here and your heart's over here and I can really just do that, you can't belong to two masters. You can't do it. You have to be loyal to the one. So, again, let's use another illustration here. I kind of use this, the discrepancy between what we say matters and what actually does. It's not always going to be a negative thing. Okay? It's not always a negative thing. I know I used a pirate chest negative illustration. But now let's look at another illustration. A woman here in our church. I know we have a few of them. Prays and reads and writes and makes cards and visits people every day. She's just, when she's at home, she's talking to her grandkids about it, and then she's just, she's out in the community, and she's just this image, She's like, man, I can't wait for Sunday morning. I get there early. I get in my pew. I'm wanting to talk to people about this stuff. And guess what? She comes in on Wednesday night. And, we're still having this lesson, and Pirate Chest Man over here, he just stood up and he said what he said. But I kind of know this lady. And I'm like, ma'am, what are your priorities? Sometimes what we'll see is that she'll probably say something like this. Well, I'd like to say God, but I think I promote myself sometimes too often. I just could spend more time thinking about him. Or I just could give back maybe a little bit more. I don't spend as much time in the Word as I possibly think I could. There's some days where I just find my mind wandering and life gets a little too difficult for me. And, I pray as much as I can, but sometimes I just fall short. You know what she is? We're like, man, she's being too hard on herself. That we know based on her priorities. See, again, this isn't the negative side. This is the positive side. We see her actions. Those are some good actions. She's being too hard on herself. Her tattling priorities sing her praises and deliver her honor. They also show who she is. Not because she didn't express it, but because that's what we saw. That's what her priorities were. So, this morning we're going to do something for the remainder of the time. We're going to do some exploring to see what matters most to us and what our priorities have to say. And, I do want to put some things out there just for clarity's sake. God has taught us what should matter most. Matthew 6, verse 33. We just go down a little bit further. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. We all know this. And his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Boy, they should make a song about that. But, his kingdom, his righteousness, his king, his rule, his people, his blessing. God's very clear. Jesus is very clear on where our priorities lie. Or at least should lie. Or if you didn't quite get that one, if that one didn't work, this one might. I like how Colossians 1 and verse 18 really. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence. Hey, guess what? Where is he in all things? If you didn't get Matthew 6:33, this is as plain as day as it'll come. In all things, he's number one. Where's your priorities? So again, I do want to make that very clear as we move forward with this. God has very plainly shared what our priorities are. We talk about that in the Bible study. What's your main goal? We might use that one this morning. A Christian's attitude, where your main goal should be, what your priorities should be. God's already explained that. So God and then family and our faith and then our church and family and everything, that is the right answer. What I gave you this morning, you're right. God first, and then the faith in your family, that driving forward, and then here, the church, because they all kind of feed into one another, right? You know, I mean, if you don't have God first, you're not going to put your family and the faith of your family first, and then where would church be? Because, I mean, we're just a combination of families that are sharing faith with one another. So, again, that is the real answer. But is that the real answer for us? So, this morning we're going to explore that a little bit more. I'm going to ask you 4 questions to help. These are not designed to shame anyone. Why? Because I can point back to, guys, I don't come up with anything up here that I'm not working on myself. You know, always know that. If I'm working on it, that's usually how I get this stuff myself. So, we're going to look at 4 different questions, and it's going to challenge us to align our priorities with proclamations. Okay? So, number 1, what things do you think about most throughout the day? What things do you think about most throughout the day? I told a little bit earlier, a scientist once said, don't know if this is actually true or not, but I'm sure it's probably a lot. A human has an average of about 17,000 thoughts a day. Okay? About 17,000 different thoughts a day. And I don't exactly know how they judge that and what they classify as a thought or not. I don't know. But that's what they say on average. So, the reason I want to start with this one is, it's totally private. I mean, your thoughts are between you and God. Literally. I mean, it is you, your conscience, and God. There you are. You know, you can say a lot of things. No one can judge those thoughts. 99% of what we think isn't shared. So, if this is a tattling, it's just doing so to you and God. We're going to look at Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4. Page 1806. I know I have it up there, but if you're wanting to follow along. Philippians chapter 4, and we'll look at verses 4. Well, we're going to read 4 through 10, but we'll start with verses 4, 8, and 10. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Come down with me to verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are good of report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, watch this, meditate on these things. Verse 10, but I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again, though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity. You know, if I ask you this, do you rejoice in the Lord greatly every day? Is that important to you? How do you do that? Well, verse 8 tells us right here. Isn't this beautiful, by the way? You don't got to wonder how to get your thoughts right. How to change your thought. What does it tell you to think about? Here you have it. If you have all these things, what are you to be meditating on every day? You know, how do we get to that? Let's go ahead and read now. Let's read verse 5 and then 6. Let your gentleness be known to all men, the Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. How do you meditate on those things? Well, you go and ask God for help. I mean, how do you get there? How do you start thinking about all these things? Well, we need to rejoice daily. And we need to go and we got to ask God. It's pretty plain and simple right there. We got to have a contact with God. We need to have a relationship with Him. You know, in large part, using our mental energy dwelling on things that are of God. Think about that. You know, things like the greatness of God, the power of the Bible, the love of Jesus, the need to be more like Him, the value of God's people. Did you know, if you know how great it would be if you could just actually, we talked about that, write down those 17,000 thoughts. And every time you get to one of them, I think we would all see, wow, how many times did I write did I think about today the greatness of God? You know, things that are noble, or things that are just, or things that are pure or lovely. How many times did I actually think about that kind of stuff today? And then every time we start thinking about anything else, if we stopped it and just said, wait a minute, I gotta go back. Because God tells me what I need to meditate on. Anything that is praiseworthy. You know, how much stuff do you know that is truly praiseworthy? God knows a lot of things that are praiseworthy. But we don't spend so much time. So, again, if you carried around a notepad tomorrow and then every hour you pulled it out and jotted down things that you're thinking about, at the end of the day, you would have a pretty good idea of what matters most to you. So the question is, was it God first? Was it the faith of our families? Was it the church and the brotherly love that we share here, our church family and God's people? Was it those things? So the challenge here, and that's what we're doing this morning, I want to challenge everyone to this. The challenge here is to infuse spirituality into moments of silence in the day. You know, those times when you do have that, I get it, guys, we go to jobs and stuff, I know. You know, there's certain times you got to be on top of it. Trust me, I get it. But those times you don't. What are you thinking about? Infuse those kind of things into our lives. Alright, this next one. Second question. How do you spend your discretionary income? Now this one I know is a little more, this one, it could create a little bit more of an issue because I know it. Let me guess everybody's situation. What discretionary income? You know, what income do I have going on that I don't need? Well, let me tell you, it's a big problem in America. Okay? Have you ever heard of this? A lot of kids, it's a new one. There's this new word that I heard was in the past, contentment. Now there's this big word and it's called contentment, and I know it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around, but modern day America, we have nothing extra left. And guys, I know, I'm not sitting here saying I know every single person's situation, and I know some people are like, man, you don't understand, I'm behind on it. Like I have stuff, but there are things in our lives that we need. I got a Netflix account. I need that thing. You know, a Hulu account. Or whatever it is, I'm paying for this other stuff. I need it. Yeah. At the end of the day, we find our priorities flipped upside down. You know, have any of you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey, he's just kind of a wealth entrepreneur. He just really comes up with some good guides on how to spend your money, basically, and how you can save those things. You know what Dave Ramsey would say about this? You know how you fix it? Because what we do is we tend to have this. Okay, I get it. Now, you know, you got to pay your bills. You got to render under Caesar what is Caesar. You got to do that. But then it's like, okay, and then we have this big vacation coming up in a year, and I got to start putting a little bit away for that. And then also, you know, I'm trying to get a new car because, you know, I need to have that new car smell, and just other little things. We want to go out to dinner on the weekends because that's really important to me because I like going out to dinner and having a good time, and if I don't, I'm in a bad mood. You know, it's those kind of things that we need. We need those things. And where are our priorities here? Somewhere at the bottom of that list, at the very bottom, okay, is my giving back to God. Okay, whatever, if I can find some, hopefully dinner isn't too expensive on Friday or Saturday night. Hopefully we get through that. I won't leave as big of a tip, and I'll take that and I'll put it in the jet. Now the problem is, Dave Ramsey would tell you to flip that upside down. You know, those things that are truly important, those are the things you pay. That Netflix account, you don't need that. They can do, you know, because you want to be entertained. Or whatever it is, that new piece of equipment that, you know, is going to help you listen to the radio better, or whatever it is, I don't exactly know. But where are we prioritizing our money? Kind of goes back to the pirate treasure chest guy, right? He's got a lot. I mean, that's important. He doesn't share anything. He doesn't do anything with it. And then he tells us how much God's people and love for them dominates his life. I don't know, dude. I mean, that doesn't sound like it to me. If we needed a better illustration, turn with me to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, we'll read 6 and then 9 through 10. Now, godliness with contentment is a great gain. Then go down to verse 9. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which can drown men in destruction and perdition. Boom. If priorities could be one thing and real heart another, these verses wouldn't exist. If we could separate those two and truly just say, here's what I spend my time prioritizing about, and here's where my heart stands, these verses wouldn't exist here. They show how much such things can dominate our heart. We can also turn over in the same verse, or in the same chapter, just go a little further down. Verse 17, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good, that they be rich in good, works ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. And you know what? I have a good sneaky suspicion that pirate chess guy would try to make this argument. Say, yeah, but you just don't get it. I truly do love God. It's just, I can't quite, that's for me. Come on, it's for me. What story is that going to remind you of? Rich young ruler? Give up what you have, follow me. So, again, the challenge here, we're going to move through these next couple a little quicker. The challenge here is to get on that Dave Ramsey budget and flip it upside down. Contribution and charity and giving back to what's important, that's at the top. Not your Netflix account. Not your whatever it is that you do for enjoyment that we have to pay. So, again, we're going to go ahead. I want to move through the next couple a little quicker. The third question. How do you spend your discretionary time? Oh, boy. Now, this one's just like the money. I know, I get it. Look, what time? I don't have any time left in my day. I've said that many times. I gotta get if I don't work 9 to 10 hours a day, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Can't make a living off that. And then I gotta get my beauty sleep. Because, if I don't get that, I'm just gonna be grumpy all day while I'm working. And so, we don't have any time. Guys, we know this isn't true. Not fully. We know that, and I get it, I understand there are people with jobs, and I'm not saying, hey, you need to, but here again, it may just be a couple hours a day. Now, you know about those couple hours a day, because what we'll do is we'll just kind of unwind. I gotta unwind. I gotta go turn on the television and just do something that can take my mind off of everything that I've done. There are many who argue that they put God first and love God's people and love the Word, and if they had more time, they would do more. But they don't. They find time sometimes on that weekend, or on that Sunday, or whatever the case. They find time. I'm sorry, guys, I've met some really busy people, successful people. I still see them out and about at a restaurant on the weekend. I still see them going out on the boat. We have time. So what do we have? What do we do when we have options? How much time is captured for godly things? So again, what habit is the most? Like the woman though. Remember the woman, not the pirate chess man, the woman in the opening example, the opening illustration. She prayed, and she read, and she wrote cards, and she reached out, and she did for others. And even though she said her priorities needed work, the way she used her time, and towards whom she used it with, that defined her. That's where she spent her time, and we recognize that. And guys, let me just tell you this is not even part of it. If you don't think people are recognizing where you're spending your time, and where you're spending, most of your thought, they do. They do. Believe it or not, people are just as smart as you and me. They catch on to things. Sometimes we don't think, we think we're the slickest person in the room. We're not. People understand. People know what's going on. So, again, we'll go ahead and reiterate this. Turn with me to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, and we'll read verses 15 through 19. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is, and do not be drunk with wine, in which is a dispensation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in fear of God. You know, if there was no link between how we used our time and the value of our spiritual life, this verse wouldn't be here. You know, don't think that this isn't relevant, because this is why. It's the most relevant thing. It wouldn't be here. It is linking what we do with what we love. You know, it's linking our treasure time with our heart's desire. It challenges us to prove our hearts with our time. So, time's failing fast. You know, guys, why do we have all this? It was going on back then. People don't know how to spend their time. People spend it for themselves so often. So we have this for that. The challenge here is the modified miracle morning. I learned that. That's not even mine. But the modified miracle morning, maybe sometimes if we just truly don't find that extra time. You know what you can do is maybe go to bed if you're super tired at night. I know some people, the Lord for a long day, pick that a little bit earlier. And wake up a little bit earlier. And maybe find that time in the morning instead of saying, okay, I got to go get my jog in now. You know, maybe I can pick up my time on my jog. And I can spend that extra half hour or that extra 45 minutes that morning praying or studying or talking, you know, being in the book. So, again, that's what we're working for. Finally, number 4 here, tattling priorities. What do you talk about the most? Again, turn with me to Matthew chapter 12. What do you talk about the most? Matthew chapter 12. We'll read verses 34 through 37. If I can get there. 34 through 37. Brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good of treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you, that for every idle word men may speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. I didn't say it. Jesus said that. You know, what matters most will find its way into what we talk about. I promise. It will find its way into our speech. We'll talk about what we love most with our friends. There's no doubt about it. That's what we will spend our time doing. You know, what fills the heart is spoken. So what we speak will be used to judge us by others. A lot of times, others are going to judge you off of it. But most importantly, by our God. That's who we are. You know, that's what we do. Sad example. People who say they love God's people, but talk badly about them behind each other's back. Pretty sad example. But guess what? It's a pretty popular action. You know, how can we say that at church, at number 3, you know, that most important thing to me, but yet, I don't like Brother Max over there. I got a problem with him. You know, he gets up here and he starts telling me stuff I don't really want to hear. How can we say that? How can we let our speech get to that point? You know, and turn with me to Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, and this is where we'll end this morning. Ephesians chapter 4, We'll look at verse 29. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. You know who does good? Who does these kind of good things? People who love building up one another. That's who love it. That's who does good. People who love sharing the message of Christ, sharing in the Word, and love seeing other people get built up from it. Not sitting here, what do you have to gain if you're just keeping it for yourself? You actually have almost everything to lose when you're just keeping it for yourself. The challenge here is to realize words reveal hearts. And every day speak of grace and to edify. Remember that. Something I'm working on. What we're talking about should be edifying to one another. Should be building each other up. The Bible characters like Jesus and Stephen and Paul and Peter, how do you know about them? How do you know anything about them? What they love most? How do you know what they put first into their lives? Very rarely do they say. You know them from their actions. You know Paul because he sat in that prison cell and was rejoicing. You know Peter whenever he stood up to the multitudes of the crowd that at times wanted to kill him. And he stood there and he stood for the truth. And of course we know Jesus. If Jesus would have just came and he would have just been a talker, just said a bunch of stuff, how much would that really have stuck? We probably wouldn't be even reading things about it. We did it because his actions. He was who he said he was. Now, the question is this morning, is that, are we who we say we are? Where do our priorities, what are our actions, what do we spend time talking about? Or spend time thinking about, or use our time with, or maybe a little bit of our extra income. What do we do with those things? That's what defines us. It always will. Not what we say. So, this morning, if you haven't gone down to that water baptism, or maybe you've found yourself swaying a little bit from the things that are priorities, should be important, and your actions aren't backing up your words,